The New Orleans Saints are not close. We got all of that and a little bit of land yap for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I am your host, your friend, Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints as a Saints beat writer over at LouisianaSports.net. And on today's episode of Locked On Saints, the New Orleans Saints need to seriously consider trades at the trade deadline in order to help themselves when it comes to their future, as their present is very, very bleak. Rookie quarterback Tyler Shough's first start overshadowed by another dismal performance across the entire roster. And to kick everything off today, the New Orleans Saints are going to have a hard time making anybody believe that they're close, because the loss against the Los Angeles Rams is proof positive that they absolutely are not. We got all that coming up for you on today's episode. We appreciate you very much, whether it's your first time or your next time being here with us this time, making a short first listen and being it every day or here on the show, which is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by friends over at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if that first $5 bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Head over to FanDuel.com today to get started. The New Orleans Saints have said in a couple of different ways that they are close, that they're heading in the right direction, that there's promise, that there are things that are looking up, that they're building something, that they want to compete and be competitive. And after their performance up against the Los Angeles Rams, they've only proven the exact opposite so far. There were low expectations going into this game between the Saints, who were starting a rookie quarterback for his first career start, traveling on the road in a bit of a hostile environment, as it turned out, SoFi Stadium this time around, and going up against one of the NFL's great teams, right? One of the elite teams in today's league. And it looked like they were entirely outmatched in a way that even still fell below the already low expectations. The New Orleans Saints are not close. The New Orleans Saints are not a competitive football team. At least that's not what they showed on the field up against the Los Angeles Rams. And I really appreciated what it was that veteran safety Justin Reid said after the game, where he was talking about how the team has the right attitude behind closed doors in terms of making sure that they're working, that they're dedicated, that they're showing up, that they're getting things done, that they're not out there in public spaces saying bad things about where the team is and creating division, that they have a team of problem solvers as opposed to guys that create problems. But my favorite thing that he mentioned was a big part of the accountability factor is not just pointing out what's wrong with the team, but pointing out the solutions that the team would need to undergo in order to address those problems. So in that same spirit, that's where I want to start with today's episode. Not just pointing out the problems, of which there are many, but looking at the possible solutions for this team. And as I looked and thought about and planned this show out and mapped out certain solutions to some of the Saints' largest issues, it became very, very clear that many of the solutions are not solutions the Saints are just going to stumble upon and get fixed and get implemented, rather, in order to get those problems fixed here in 2025, which is what the statement that we're close, quote unquote, would indicate, that they are close to turning a corner, or that they are close to addressing some of the issues that they have, or that they are close to leaping and bounding some of the shortcomings that this team has on its roster and across its, organization, really. And I think that that's still worth having a conversation about, because the Saints are not going to make a coaching change. The Saints are not going to overreact to what they have seen so far here in a 1-8 start. But they need to react. They need to do something, because right now it's going to get harder and harder and harder to get anyone to buy in on what the vision is supposed to be for a team that clearly lacks an identity on both sides of the football. And if they do have an identity, has failed to replicate that identity and turn it into success. So let's talk about some of the things that the Saints have struggled with and what possible solutions are and what the timeline for that could potentially look like. And I'm telling you right now, it's the timeline part that might be the most sort of saddening and frustrating for a fan when it comes to this entire conversation. So the Saints struggle to run the football, right? This is a team that had one 29-yard run thanks to quarterback Taysom Hill, who went in for a series of plays at one point and had 57 rushing yards in total. This is now the 5th consecutive game in which this team has not been able to rush for 100 team rushing yards. And again, 57 yards, 29 of those came on one run. And in fact, that 29-yard run was the only rush by the New Orleans Saints that went for over 4 yards in the entire game. What do you have to do in order to be able to fix that? Well, a lot of this comes down to the protection up front. The New Orleans Saints have not been a successful team when it comes to blocking in the run game. That might mean then the next question becomes, how do you actually address that and make it better? Well, that's probably personnel changes, if we're being completely honest, but the Saints don't necessarily have the better options to turn to on their roster. So that feels like that's part of what the Saints should be looking at going into this offseason. And ideally doing so with veteran players, not draft and develop players, something that this Saints organization has proven that it can't do successfully as of right now. And so go out there, find the veterans that you can plug in, and probably want some bigger bodies on the interior most specifically. So a possible solution there would be going to free agency and trying to find the players that meet the profile that work for a Kellen Moore run game, because it doesn't feel like the Saints necessarily have that. The other thing is finding running backs that are going to be able to go out there and pick up yards after contact. That was something that this Saints team was very good at early on in the season. Running backs not so successful with it, often going down on first contact here throughout this game and really over the course of the past few weeks. It's an eye test thing, but the analytics back it up as well. Over on the defensive side, the New Orleans Saints could not get off the field. The Saints offense possessed the football for just 16 minutes and 7 seconds, a franchise worst. And according to Nick Underhill over at New Orleans Football, the 13th worst game in NFL history when it comes to time of possession. So the run game would help you stay on the field in those situations. The Saints went 3 and out in their first 3 possessions, 4 of their first 5 possessions, not something that's going to go their way. But the Saints defense also could not get off the field, particularly during the third quarter, where the Saints possessed the football for only 1 minute and 12 seconds. In fact, they had that's just game time. According to Kellen Moore, over 40 minutes of real time, or around 40 minutes of real lifetime between a touchdown at the end of the first half where maybe you thought, okay, this team is maybe finding something here, until when they finally touched the ball nearly 10 minutes into the third quarter. Unacceptable for New Orleans. You're not going to be able to win football games that way. So not being able to stay on the field on offense, not being able to get off the field on defense, compounded to create a really, really challenging situation, not just for rookie Tyler Shough, but for the New Orleans Saints as a whole. And finally, the Saints' inability to get started, period. That's the end of the sentence. Their inability to get started is something that has been a big issue for this team from the very beginning. And the play calling in particular in scripted plays should allow you to be able to get a first down. And the Saints have not been able to do that consistently enough to start games, nor have they been able to do that consistently enough to open up the second half. That's a big thing Kellen Moore's got to look at. His strategy when it comes to scripting plays, why it's been so inefficient, and how to get that adjusted. Because if you can't put together scripted drives, you're going to have a really, really tough time outside of when the defense is playing off at the end of each half, which is where we saw the Saints have the most success so far in this game. Coming up next, speaking of success, Tyler Shough, New Orleans Saints rookie quarterback, did have some success, but it was completely overshadowed by everything else going on with this team. Let's get to that as we continue on and continue to try to optimize and identify solutions for this team moving forward here as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I'm Cody Rourke from Locked On Broncos, and this episode is brought to you by Peloton. Peloton is shaping the future of fitness with the brand new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. This is Peloton's most advanced equipment yet, giving you real-time guidance and endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, or you're cross-training with your favorite instructors like Alex Toussaint. It's training reimagined to make your workout more personal. Peloton is built for breakthroughs. With features that help you plan, stay motivated, and hit peak performance, you can let yourself run, lift, flex, and go while Peloton handles all the rest. Plus, Peloton IQ provides real-time strength coaching, tracking your progress and suggesting weights that challenge you so you can get stronger. Plus, the new movement tracking camera, it counts your reps and corrects your form in real time, making sure every rep is safer and smarter. So let yourself run, lift, flex, push, and go. Explore the new Peloton cross-training Tread Plus at onepeloton.com.
Today's episode of Locked On Saints brought to you by our friends over at Supply House. When the opening whistle blows on some of those big projects and big repairs that might be in store for you, make sure you get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts at your doorstep as quickly as tomorrow with over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items for you to choose from for all those trusted brands in the business that you know and love. And not to mention that real-time inventory as well as lead times to make sure you're not punting on any of those big projects, all thanks to Supply House. And of course, that fantastic Trade Master program as well. So join that free Trade Master program so you can score some serious perks that include things like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Just visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use the promo code SHNFL5 for 5% off of your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. All right, family, a dismal performance by the New Orleans Saints in their 34-10 loss to the Los Angeles Rams, completely overshadowed actually some pretty good positives, all within context, around rookie quarterback Tyler Shough's debut. Shough threw for about 176 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. The interception came on a fourth down. Just kind of, figured can't take a sack on fourth down, tried to put the ball up to Rashid Shaheed, ended up getting intercepted by Manuel Forbes there. But the play was actually drawn up and completely sold out for Chris Olave on a route over on the opposite side. There was an underneath route that maybe Tyler Shough could have found to Taysom Hill, but he said that he lost sight of him, so then just put the ball up for Rashid Shaheed. I'm going to treat fourth down interceptions for Tyler Shough just like I treated them for Spencer Rattler. You go out there and you can't take a sack, and so put the ball up, give somebody an opportunity. That's what Tyler Shough did. But outside of that, I thought that there were some promising things that we saw. Now, again, I mentioned all things in context. This is still a loss. The Saints still only scored one touchdown, and the Saints offense could not move the ball through the air on a consistent enough basis, nor, of course, was there any support from a run game, and hardly, and certainly early on in the game, not a lot of protection going the Saints' way on offense as well, up front with the offensive line. So with all of that in context, a couple of the positives for Tyler Shough came from his ability to operate out of structure and the clear arm talent that he has. Good ball placement on the touchdown pass to Juwan Johnson that gave Juwan an opportunity to go out there and fight for more yards. The big 27-yard completion from Tyler Shough to Chris Olave, where he evaded some pressure, stepped out, and then stepped up and then delivered down the field. Really good there. Two corner routes or a couple of corner routes off of play action with the kind of those C routes where you run inside, but then break it back outside up against the boundary, finding those spots and finding those lanes there, and then finding some other spots where he was able to, dump the ball off or get the ball to a receiver. But the Saints are plagued by kind of the same inconsistencies over and over again. Again, the inability to move the ball on scripted plays is a massive concern, because if you can't do that, like we said earlier, you're going to have a hard time moving the ball out of structure as well. And if you're only making plays out of structure and you can't make plays in structure, then that says a lot about your offensive system and scheme too. It feels like, right? I'm kind of reading into that, but that feels like something that should be, hey, if you can't operate in structure, red flag, red flag, red flag. And so the Saints have got to get that kind of stuff figured out. So what do? Some of it is about getting the quarterbacks in rhythm a little bit early. Other parts of it are, again, developing a more consistent run game that can support your young quarterback. We haven't seen that consistently here throughout the season, although it started off very strong early on in the year. And so the Saints have got to get whatever that is figured out. But I think a part of the solution for getting things in structure to work is going to be finding a way to get into a rhythm and finding a way to get the support of the run game. And that rhythm can be 3-step drop, dump the ball off, 5-step drop, get a quick hit, hit a quick hitch or get a quick slant or something like that. Like there will be those types of plays over the course of time that the Saints are going to find, okay, this is really comfortable for Tyler Shough. So give him a series of those types of comfort building plays, and maybe it allows him to settle in a little bit. Now, we have to acknowledge that the Los Angeles Rams are a very, very good team. That being said, the Saints have also not shown up against some not so great teams as well. And a lot of the teams that the Saints have lost to early on throughout this season are teams that currently have winning records and in some cases have very good records, like the Buffalo Bills, like the New England Patriots, and now like the Los Angeles Rams. But an inability to really go out there and perform against bad teams, good teams, and great teams just kind of runs the gamut that shows you kind of where this Saints team is. And sometimes that's going to overshadow even the most positive performances, which it felt like Tyler Shough and Chase Young were the most positive things to come out of this team. Maybe you could say some special teams things that worked out pretty well. The Saints special teams unit, particularly on the coverage side, has gotten a lot better here throughout the season. Isaac Yiadom with a great play on a punt coverage. A couple of missed field goals by the Rams, one of which forced by a diving Justin Reed. So there are those little things that are positive, but they're all going to be overshadowed by a faulty run defense or a porous run defense, a coverage unit that surrenders so much space in some cases. And we've already heard that it's execution, not scheme from the players themselves, a run game that wasn't able to get started over on the offensive side of the football, an inconsistent pass rush that outside of Chase Young has really struggled to have a consistent presence that disrupts the rhythm of an opposing quarterback. Matthew Stafford completed 75% of his passes in this game. That is about as automatic as you're going to get outside of some incredible performances that we've seen from guys like Drew Brees in the past. Then you build on top of that some of the consistent issues of ball control. Again, Alvin Kamara with a fumble, did not touch the football after that and hardly hit the field after that as well. Kellen Moore said that wasn't really like a disciplinary thing, but it sure looked and felt like it. And then, and I would like if that was a disciplinary thing. I would actually credit the Saints for that, to say, you know what, if you can't hold on to the football, you're not going to be on the field, period. That is some form of accountability in a way, right? We see Sean Payton do that. We saw Sean Payton do that to Mark Ingram one time, right? And so I actually don't think that would be a bad thing, regardless of who the player is and what the name is on the back of their jersey and the number is that they wear. If there's an opportunity to go out there and create some display of accountability, I think that there is a reason to do that, just to show that you can. I also liked what Justin Reed said about accountability after the game too, that it's about going out there and owning your mistakes. Alvin Kamara has never been somebody that shied away from things like that. Him putting the football on the ground is something he's not going to be very happy with himself about. And he did not touch the ball again. After that, it turned over to rookie Devin Neal. And of course, a lot of passing, because the Saints were down 24 points already at that point, or near 24 points already at that point. And so for New Orleans, like, you can't really buy into a bunch of the positives because of the distraction of all of the things that show that this team is not ready, that this team is not close, and that this team is not a competitive one right now. Now their schedule eases up towards the end of the season. And you've got to prove that you can compete in these upcoming 8 games up against more beatable, less formidable opponents. But until you're able to start hanging with some of the best in the NFL, you can't call yourself close, because then the question becomes, close to what? Coming up next, we'll wrap everything up, taking a look at the trade deadline and why the New Orleans Saints should absolutely be entertaining trades before the trade deadline on Tuesday. We got that coming up for you next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints also brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, the official sports betting partners of the NBA. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on all of the action. And even if you missed the opening tip for those basketball games, you can still get in on everything going on, because right now with FanDuel and their live bets, you can bet on who's going to score next, fourth quarter comebacks, and you can even group together a bunch of live bets into a same game parlay, so you have the potential for an even bigger payout. There's no better place to get in on all of the action than over at FanDuel today. And of course, if you're still following the NFL and this New Orleans Saints team, 4.5-point underdogs on the road up against the Carolina Panthers next week may be something worth getting in on there. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. So head over to FanDuel.com to sign up and get started today with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. The New Orleans Saints should absolutely be shopping their players at this point when it comes to tomorrow's NFL trade deadline. There have been so many reports about players that could be drawing interest from around the NFL, whether it's wide receivers Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, and Brandon Cooks, linebacker Pete Werner, cornerback Alontae Taylor, edge rusher Carl Granderson, even veteran corners like Isaac Yiadom were brought up, and even veteran offensive linemen like Dylan Radins were all brought up, and Cesar Ruiz were all brought up in trade talks over the course of the last few weeks. The New Orleans Saints now sitting at 1-8 with not much left to prove throughout the rest of the regular season. From a team perspective, at this point, this team is becoming a lot more about individual evaluations and the development of young up-and-coming players, that the Saints should absolutely be open to dealing players and maybe even should consider coming down on some of the requested price tags on some of those players just for the sake of being able to get some additional draft capital and looking at being able to maximize the team's opportunity to build its roster through the draft. The Saints are in line right now for the number 1 overall selection, and to this point, only have 5, at max potentially 6, draft picks in the upcoming year's NFL draft after trading away a 4th round pick and a later pick as well in a couple of different moves, including bringing in a massively underutilized asset like wide receiver Devon Vele. The Saints are not really in position to do much building through free agency, not at a big spender position. Now, they are going to be in a better salary cap situation because they're going to be able to roll over $20+ million from this year. They're getting a little bit of cap relief going into next year because of the Derek Carr retirement and some of the money that's going to come off the books at that point. But they still have some extensions that are going to kick in, some accelerations that are going to kick in for players that probably aren't going to be around next season, some potential upcoming retirements as well at the end of this year. So there's a lot that's going to happen when it comes to the Saints' monetary and financial side going into next season. That's going to be pretty hard to plan for when it comes to player futures and things like that. So that means that the draft is really their most successful avenue when it comes to building for its future. Now, I still think that going to free agency and bringing in and identifying veterans, especially in the offensive line, can be very helpful for this team, potentially on the interior defensive line as well. But it's going to be the draft that's going to lead the New Orleans Saints to a position where they might be able to complete their rebuild. Now, this is a team that has not drafted very effectively in the recent past. The 2025 draft class is creating a lot of promise. However, we have seen all of the players that the Saints drafted to an extended extent so far this season. We highlighted some of the promises, the ups when it came to Tyler Shough. We'll wait to see what the downs are throughout the season and how those are further developed, patched up, built around, grown, like how you address those, all of that. So we'll see all of that throughout. But guys like Quincy Riley, Jonas Sanker, we're seeing now some opportunities continue for Danny Stutzman and others. Calvin Banks Jr. has been a starter at left tackle all season, has a lot of things he needs to be doing better, has a lot of opportunity to grow and a lot of time to do it, however. And so the Saints are going to need to be able to rely on their ability to draft in order to be able to properly rebuild this team. And if the Saints go into 2026 and fail in the draft again and are not at least a skosh better in 2026 than they are here in 2025, I don't expect them to be massively better in 2026 at this point because there are so many deficiencies they've got to get cleaned up, but they need to be performing better and stop this downward trajectory that they're presently on beginning in 2026. If they don't, then the people that are making the decisions around the draft, the people that are building the roster, the front office becomes the next point to go into the crosshairs in terms of where things need to be changed. The coaching staff was flipped last offseason. this upcoming offseason, it's all about the player roster. We've talked about that since the moment that they flipped the coaching staff, but then retained the Peyton/Dennis Allen roster that they've mostly retained so far here in this first year under Kellen Moore and Brandon Staley, talking offense and defense there. And then if those things don't get better in 2026, and the only thing left to do is point to the people that are making those decisions. And eventually that would have to be the reckoning, if you will, at that point. But for 2026, it's going to be all about, can this team accumulate the assets that it needs, and can this team draft? And if they can't do that, then there's no hope for them moving forward, right? Because that's going to be the pathway, or not no hope moving forward, but no hope for this iteration of what they're trying to create. And so the Saints have got to be able to draft better. And so when you're asking for a 3rd round pick for one of these wide receivers and a team offers you a 4th round pick, you might consider taking it. When you're asking for a 5th round pick for one of these veteran players and a team offers you a 6th round pick, you might consider taking it at this point. The Saints need to start paying attention to what they need for their, in terms of assets moving forward from this point. And it all begins with the NFL draft. The Saints have a day at this point to potentially start to accumulate some of those draft picks and draft capital. And I think that the Saints need to actively be considering that. I don't have a lot of hopes that they will, though. I don't think this is a team that's looking to sell, even though they should be. Coming up in tomorrow's episode, we'll dive deeper into the numbers and take a deeper look as well at Tyler Shough's inaugural performance as a starter. We got all that coming up for you here on the show. We appreciate you very much, as always, making us a part of your day, part of your routine, for saying yes to me and the show. If you see me, please say hi. If you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on your favorite social media at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing, how you living. Let me know how you momming them. And trust you, that nation. I'll holla at you.